Treaty Negotiations Minister Paul Goldsmith recently appeared before the Maori Affairs Select Committee and stated that the Crown will not agree to treaty settlements that call into question Crown sovereignty. This marks a decisive moment in New Zealand's constitutional story. Goldsmith said that Crown sovereignty was incontrovertible. That means that it can be neither denied nor disputed. Watch.
And you're right, the previous government did initial a settlement less than 3 weeks before the election in 2023. It did include an unusual element, which was an agree to disagree clause over sovereignty, and I've just got the statement here. It included this statement from Te Whānau Apanui's position, saying that sovereignty has never been taken, ceded, voluntarily relinquished, or acquired in any way, in any other way, by a foreign power of government, including the Crown. And frankly, we're not comfortable with that arrangement. Ultimately, it would mean a settlement and the handing over of tens of millions of dollars to an entity which fundamentally doesn't accept the authority of the Crown to make a full and final settlement, as one reading of that. And so we haven't advanced that, and we're still in conversations with Te Whānau Apanui, but we're not prepared to progress that on that basis. So that's a challenge that we're facing. We want to conclude treaty settlements, but we're not going to do it on that basis where you've got such a fundamental disagreement about the core sovereignty of the country. Our view very much is that sovereignty rests with the democratically elected government of the day, representing all New Zealanders. And we don't think a settlement based on that is appropriate.
Goldsmith then beautifully articulated the source of legitimacy of the sovereign authority of the modern New Zealand Crown. Listen to this.
Thank you. Just a substatement.
Yeah. Many iwi don't believe that sovereignty was ever ceded. So I wouldn't have thought that was a premise for settlements being possible.
Well, this would have been the first time that you had a settlement with an explicit agree to disagree clause in the settlement, where like I say, the people settling and say that they've never ceded, it's never been relinquished, never acquired in any other way. Now that was their view, and they're entitled to that view. But fundamentally, if we're coming to a settlement, which I think the broad public support for treaty settlements rests in large measure on those settlements being full and final settlements. Now it is an issue. It is an issue that two parties in government and Parliament today, your party, the Greens, and Te Pāti Maori, effectively don't seem to agree with the idea of full and final settlements. But the National Party certainly does, and government parties, and as far as I'm aware, the Labour Party still agrees with that basic premise. And I think that's very important to the ongoing public support for treaty settlements. And that's a very significant element of that. And so what you're left, one reading of that agreement that was in that settlement, which is to say, yes, we'll take the settlement, but actually we don't agree with your authority to make the settlement. And I don't think that's a tenable position.
Can I clarify a little more on that? Because I appreciate you speaking about this. We may disagree on full and final settlements, but I'm pretty sure the leader of the Labour Party has also recently stated that the acknowledgement that Māori did not cede sovereignty. And I'm just wanting to zero in on the idea that by accepting a settlement, an iwi has ceded sovereignty. I think most iwi would reject that interpretation. Whānau Apanui, an interesting example, because unusually they still have 90% of their original land. And so for them, it would be surely a very significant concern to suggest that through the settlement process, they had ceded sovereignty of that land that they retain. But my main point is that surely there's a version of accepting that settlement can be done, but that is not a relinquishment of sovereignty on the part of an iwi.
Well, look, ultimately, the government's view has always been very clear on this, that the that the sovereignty was established by a process of constitutional and jurisdictional steps, starting with the signing of the treaty, followed by the proclamations by Governor Hobson in May 1840 and the gazetting of proclamations in May 1840, and then has been asserted and held ever since. Yes, people can debate about what was in the minds of people when they signed a treaty, but we're very clear that through a series of processes after that, the sovereignty is held by the democratically elected people of the day, as expressed through the government that we have in New Zealand. And we're not moving from that position.
Crown's position is clear. The Crown is sovereign. The Crown is simply a representation of the democratic will of all of the people of New Zealand here today. The position taken by the Crown is a masterstroke. The Crown's sovereign authority is derived from the democratic will of all the people of New Zealand, as they expressed in the last election. The Crown's position is that it will not allow iwis to displace democracy and reimpose feudal tribalism. A clear statement has been made. We are a democratic nation state and not a territory made up of feudal iwi microstates. Further to what Goldsmiths impugned about the proposed clause, I can see another serious objection. The clause presupposes that the iwi in question had a sovereignty to cede, and that's not a settled matter. It's also implicit in the presupposition that the sovereign authority claimed by the iwi is equivalent in nature to the sovereign authority held by the Crown. That equivalence is contrary to the narrative that iwi understanding of what sovereignty means is different to what sovereignty actually is. This misunderstanding is widely accepted to derive from different translations of the Treaty of Waitangi. There is no equivalent to Crown sovereignty in Maori tribal society, and iwi could not have ceded a sovereignty that didn't exist. The treaty has never been about a transfer of political authority. It's about the extension of an existing political authority to another territory. The preamble of the treaty in all translations is decisive. In 1840, everyone agreed the land was lawless prior to the Treaty of Waitangi. Pita Tepani, the leader of Ngāti Hini, responded to the Crown's position. He said the Crown can say all they like that they hold sovereignty. We are just as staunch and ferocious in saying that we hold authority and sovereignty over our own. Now, it's not clear who the we is that Tipani is referring to, or who he thinks are our own. Presumably Tipani's we is the Hini iwi, and our own must refer to the descendants of Hini. And the obvious objection to Tipani's iwi sovereignty claim is that all the members of the Hini iwi born in New Zealand have the rights of New Zealand citizens. Under the Treaty of Waitangi, the Crown has a duty to protect the democratic and civil rights of all New Zealanders, including the Hini iwi Maoris who are New Zealand citizens. To allow the Hini iwi to wield authority over its own would be a breach of the Crown's duty to protect its own. Now, one of the things that I never heard of with any of these sovereignty claims by the likes of Tipani is whether they've taken the obvious step of cancelling their New Zealand citizenship. It's clearly contradictory for Tipani to claim that the Crown is not his sovereign, yet at the same time claim citizenship from the Crown. Come on, Pita. Walk the talk, bro. Minister Goldsmith pointed out that it was difficult for the Crown to settle with an entity that fundamentally doesn't acknowledge the authority of the Crown. A similar argument can be made about iwi charitable trusts that don't acknowledge the Crown's authority to give them funding or tax-free status. What the iwi sovereignty clause and Minister Goldsmith's reply have done is bring the matter to a head. There's no longer room for ambiguity or quiet accommodation of sovereignty claims in the name of partnership or co-governance. The government has made it clear. Sovereignty is singular, it is supreme, and it is the foundation of New Zealand's democratic constitutional order. The Crown's position will reshape the treaty settlement process. Future settlements must be assumed to be conditional on the Crown's sovereignty being acknowledged as incontrovertible by the claimant iwi. And in the courts, this statement will be cited as a clear and decisive assertion of the legal framework within which all governance and authority in New Zealand must operate. The Crown's assertion must finally bring to an end the judiciary's treasonous idea that the Crown is in a relationship akin to a partnership with iwi Maoris. This is a defining moment in our history, and one that the mainstream media largely ignores or downplays. This is a day deserving of celebration, more so than the fake Matakuri solstice holiday. The Crown's forceful and unequivocal assertion of democratic authority should pull us all together and unite us within the most successful political system ever known to mankind. Minister Goldsmith's clarification of the Crown's position is a big step in the right direction. That's the direction of democracy, unity and nation building rather than rule by a communist aristocracy, ethnic separatism and a re-tribalised society. I bet a Milky Bar that the claim settlements are now stalled by iwi until they think that the political landscape is more in their favour, with another radical left socialist government in power. I'm in no doubt, the next time New Zealanders elect a Labour coalition, it will be the end of democratic rule, the end of universal suffrage, and the end of the nation state built by our forefathers. Leave a comment, let me know your thoughts on how the government has played its hand over the issue of sovereignty. Did the iwi make a serious mistake by pushing New Zealand into a corner over a sovereignty claim? Thanks for watching, give us a like would ya, and do hit subscribe to be notified of new content as it drops. See you next time.